3 days before my daughter's wedding, I caught my wife and my daughter's fiancé kissing in our kitchen. I was frozen in shock. When I tried to warn Indy, she called me crazy and threatened to ban me from the ceremony. I thought I was alone in this nightmare until Blake, the son I'd raised for 26 years, appeared beside me. His face was stone cold as he whispered, "Dad, I've been gathering evidence too. But there's a secret about Mom that you need to know. Before I tell you this shocking secret, tell me, what city are you watching from right now? Comment your location below." 3 days before what was supposed to be the happiest day of my daughter's life, I walked into my own kitchen and discovered the lie that had been eating away at my family like cancer. 5 in the morning in our Highlands Ranch home, and I was already up restless with what I'd assumed were normal father-of-the-bride jitters. The Colorado sunrise was painting our kitchen windows gold as I padded downstairs in my slippers, craving that first cup of coffee before the wedding chaos began. The kitchen door was slightly ajar. I could hear Whisper's soft laughter. Probably Indy, I thought, coming over early to help with preparations. I pushed the door open and my world shattered. My wife of 26 years was pressed against our granite island, her silk robe half open with Drew's hands tangled in her hair. They were kissing like lovers completely lost in each other, completely unaware that the man who'd paid for everything they owned was standing 10 feet away. The coffee mug I'd been reaching for might as well have been on Mars. I couldn't move, couldn't breathe. My heart hammered against my ribs so hard I was sure they'd hear it. But they were too busy destroying my life to notice. 26 years of marriage, 26 years of trust of building this family, this home. And she was throwing it away for the 28-year-old who was supposed to marry our daughter in 3 days. Some survival instinct kicked in. Instead of confronting them, I backed out as quietly as I'd entered, my hands shaking so badly I had to grip the doorframe. They never knew I was there. I made it to my home office before the full impact hit me. This wasn't just an affair, it was a double betrayal. How long had this been going on, all those late book club nights? All those times Drew came over to visit Indy, but stayed for dinner, charming us with his stories about the law firm, his plans for the future, the secret phone calls, the new clothes, the expensive lingerie she claimed was for her confidence. God, I'd been so blind. But I couldn't think about my pain now. Indy deserved to know what kind of man she was about to marry. I found her later that morning in the living room, radiant with happiness as she reviewed seating charts. She had her mother's green eyes, the same eyes that had captivated me 30 years ago, the same eyes that had lied to me hours before. "Indy, sweetheart, can we talk privately?" She looked up already impatient. "Dad, I'm really busy. 3 days left and it's about Drew." The room went cold. She dismissed her wedding planner with a wave, then turned those green eyes on me like laser beams. "What about Drew? How do you tell your daughter that her fiancé is sleeping with her mother?" There are no words for that conversation. Honey, there might be some things about Drew you don't know. Things that might make you want to reconsider. Stop! Her hand shot up like a traffic cop. "Just stop right there. Indy, please. This morning I can't believe this." She jumped to her feet, face flushed with fury. "I cannot believe you're trying to sabotage my wedding with these crazy accusations. I'm trying to protect you. From what? From being happy." Tears of rage built in her eyes. "You're jealous, Dad. You can't stand that I'm not your little girl anymore. That's not... If you can't support my marriage and keep making up lies about Drew, then don't come to my wedding. I won't let you ruin the happiest day of my life." The words hit me like a physical blow. My own daughter choosing the man who was betraying her over the father who was trying to save her. I stood there watching her storm out, and for the first time in 50 years, I felt completely, utterly alone. The knock on my office door came at 9 sharp 3 soft raps that somehow managed to sound both respectful and concerned. I'd been sitting in my leather chair for hours, staring at the same spreadsheet, my mind replaying that kitchen scene over and over. "Come in," I managed my voice rougher than intended. Blake stepped through the doorway, and I could see immediately that he knew something was wrong. At 29, my adopted son had always been perceptive, able to read situations with an intuition that had served him well in business. His dark eyes took in my rumpled clothes, my unshaven face, the cold coffee mug. "Dad, you look like hell." I tried to force a smile. "Just wedding stress, son." But Blake had never accepted easy answers. He settled into the chair across from my desk, the same chair where he'd sat as a kid doing homework while I worked late. 26 years since Liana and I had brought him home, and he'd never been anything but the son I'd always wanted. "Dad, I've been watching you for weeks. This isn't wedding stress." His voice was gentle but firm. Something's eating at you, and I think I might know what it is. My heart stopped. Had he seen something too? I don't know what you mean. Mom and Drew. The words hung between us like a confession. I've seen them together when they thought no one was looking. The relief that flooded through me was so intense I felt dizzy. I wasn't crazy. Someone else had noticed. What did you see? Blake leaned forward. Little things at first. How they'd stop talking when someone walked into a room. How Drew always knew exactly how Mom liked her coffee. How she'd light up when his name came up. He paused, running a hand through his dark hair. Last week I came home early and saw them in the garden. They were just talking, but Dad, the way he was looking at her, wasn't how a son-in-law should look at his fiancée's mother. You believe me? I said. It wasn't a question, it was profound gratitude. Of course I believe you. Blake's voice carried conviction that made my throat tight. You're the most honest man I know. If you say something's wrong, something's wrong. For the first time in hours, I could breathe properly. My adopted son, the boy I'd raised as my own, believed me when my biological daughter wouldn't. But Dad, we need to be smart about this. Indy's not going to listen to suspicions. She's head over heels in love, and she sees you as the overprotective father trying to keep his little girl from growing up. He was right. Indy had always been stubborn. So what do you suggest? Blake's expression grew calculating. We need evidence. Real, undeniable proof that even Indy can't dismiss. And how exactly do we get that? A small smile played at his mouth. I know where they meet. Tuesday and Friday afternoons like clockwork. I can help you get the proof you need. Hope mixed with apprehension. This was my son adopted, or not. He was mine, and I was about to drag him into the ugliest situation our family had ever faced. Blake, if we do this, if we're right, everything changes. Your mother, this family Indy's wedding, it all falls apart. He met my eyes steadily. Dad, if we're right, then it's already fallen apart. We're just going to be the ones to catch the pieces. Blake moved toward the door, then turned back with an expression I'd never seen before, determined, protective, almost fierce. But we need to be smart about this. If we're wrong, we lose everything. If we're right... He paused his hand on the doorknob. We need to be prepared for what comes next. 2 days before the wedding, Blake and I sat in my Honda, across from the Ritz-Carlton, Denver, watching the morning crowd flow through the revolving doors. There, Blake said, quietly pointing. Dad, that's Drew's BMW? I watched the silver sedan pull into valet. Drew stepped out with his usual confidence, handing over his keys like he owned the place. Every Tuesday and Friday afternoon, Blake explained, adjusting the camera in his lap. I noticed because I work from home. Mom always has errands, the same day's hair appointments that run long shopping trips that take hours. My jaw clenched. How many lies had I swallowed? There she is. Liana's white Lexus arrived exactly 15 minutes later. She stepped out wearing a red dress I'd never seen before, something she definitely hadn't bought for her husband's benefit. Now we wait, Blake said, raising the telephoto lens, and document everything. 2 hours felt like eternity. Blake had brought coffee, turning our stakeout into a grim parody of father-son time. We talked about work, sports, anything except what we were doing while keeping our eyes fixed on that entrance. When they emerged, I wasn't prepared for the gut punch. They walked close but not touching, maintaining professional distance. But Blake's camera caught what others might miss. Drew's hand briefly on Liana's back, the way she leaned into him, the smile I hadn't seen directed at me in years. Follow at a distance, Blake instructed as I started the engine. They walked 3 blocks to Mercantile Dining and Provision, settling into a corner booth, with the familiarity of regular customers. Through the windows we had a clear view. Can you get the shot? I asked. Blake adjusted the lens. Crystal clear. That's when it happened. Drew reached across the table, took Liana's hand. She leaned forward, and they kissed, not a friendly peck, but the passionate kiss of lovers. The camera clicked rapidly. Got it, Blake said grimly. Multiple angles. I stared at the photos on the display screen, my marriage reduced to digital evidence of betrayal. Undeniable proof that my wife was cheating with our daughter's fiancé. But Blake was studying something else, his brow furrowed. Dad, look at this. He zoomed in on their table. See that receipt Drew just signed? I squinted at the small screen. The numbers were barely visible. $300, Blake said quietly. For lunch. Dad, I've eaten there. A nice meal for 2 runs, maybe $70 tops. He looked up at me, wheels turning in his analytical mind. Drew's a junior associate at Morrison & Associates. I looked up their salary ranges, maybe $75,000 a year before taxes. So where's he getting the cash to drop $300 on lunch? The question hung between us like a smoking gun. This wasn't just about an affair anymore. This was about money, lots of it coming from somewhere it shouldn't be. Blake, I said slowly, I think we need to dig deeper into Drew's finances. Back in my office that evening, I spread the surveillance photos across my desk like evidence in a murder case. Each image told the same damning story: my wife having an affair with our daughter's fiancé. The proof was undeniable and devastating. Blake sat across from me, unusually quiet, as I organized the photos chronologically. We'd been partners for less than 24 hours, but I felt closer to him than anyone in months. These are perfect, I said, holding up a clear shot of them kissing. Even Indy won't be able to deny this. But Blake wasn't studying the photos. He was staring at his hands, face pale and troubled. Dad, there's something I need to tell you. Something in his voice made me set down the photos. In all the years I'd known him, Blake had never sounded so conflicted. What is it, son? He took a shaky breath. It's about the day Mom brought me home 26 years ago. My blood went cold. I'd always known this conversation might come the day Blake would want to know about his biological parents. Blake, if this is about your birth parents, we can talk later. Right now, we need to focus on, Dad, I'm not your nephew from Mom's side. The words rushed out like he'd been holding them back for years. I never was. I stopped breathing. What do you mean? Blake looked up, his dark eyes filled with pain and guilt. I'm Mom's biological son. The words hit like a physical blow. My adopted son, the boy I'd raised as my own, was actually Liana's biological child. That's impossible, I whispered. Your parents died in a car accident, Alex Rodriguez and his wife. We took you in because... Blake shook his head. Alex Rodriguez was real Dad. He was Mom's co-worker. But there was no wife, no car accident. The room spun. 26 years ago, Liana had come to me in tears about her distant cousin's tragic death, about the 3-year-old boy who needed a home. I'd opened my heart without question. She was pregnant, Blake continued quietly. Alex was the father, but he wanted nothing to do with her or the baby. When I was born, she panicked. She wasn't ready to be a mother, wasn't ready to tell you about the affair, so she created the orphaned nephew story. I felt like I was drowning. How long have you known? Since I was 16. I found my birth certificate looking for my social security card. Alex Rodriguez was listed as my father, but no mention of any wife or accident. When I confronted Mom, she broke down and told me everything. And you never said anything. Blake's eyes filled with tears. Dad, you were the only father I'd ever known. You taught me to ride a bike, helped with homework, walked me through every milestone. I didn't care about biology. You were my real father. But Mom made me promise never to tell. She said it would destroy our family. I stood slowly, legs unsteady. 26 years of lies. I'd believed I was the generous man who'd taken in an orphaned child, when I'd actually been raising my wife's illegitimate son. But as I looked at Blake, this young man I'd loved and been proud of for over 2 decades, I realized something surprising. It didn't matter. Biology hadn't made him my son. Love had. Loyalty had. The fact that he was here now helping uncover his own mother's betrayal proved family was about more than blood. I walked around the desk and placed my hand on Blake's shoulder. Son, I said, voice steady despite everything. You're the only honest person in this family. Are you with me to the end? Blake looked up, relief flooding his face. Always, Dad, always. One day before the wedding, my office looked like a forensic accountant's war room. Spreadsheets covered every surface, and Blake hunched over his phone, researching Morrison and Associates. Here's what we know, I said, adjusting my reading glasses. Drew Parker, Jr. Associate, 3 years out of law school. Colorado Bar Association salary surveys put him at $72,000 to $78,000 annually. Blake looked up. Before taxes. Exactly. After taxes, insurance, student loans, rent, maybe $3,000 monthly in disposable income, if he's lucky. I turned my laptop toward Blake, showing our compiled list from surveillance and Indy's social media. But look at this spending. $300 lunches, a $2,000 Rolex at Indy's birthday, that Armani suit $1,500 minimum, and that Cartier necklace he gave your mother. Blake winced at mother, but nodded. My jeweler friend priced it from Indy's Instagram photo, $8,000 to $10,000 retail. After 30 years in accounting, I knew when numbers didn't add up. Dad, I've been researching Morrison and Associates, Blake said, scrolling through his phone. Legal forum complaints about billing discrepancies. Clients saying trust fund money went missing. I leaned back, puzzle pieces clicking. Trust funds? Blake, that's where the money is. Law firms hold client money settlements, escrow estates, supposed to be untouchable. But if someone had access, they could skim small amounts from multiple accounts. Nothing big enough to trigger immediate attention. Blake's fingers flew over his screen. Dad, look. He held up his phone showing a news article dated 2 weeks ago. Morrison and Associates under investigation for client fund irregularities. My heart pounded. Read it. The Colorado State Bar opened an investigation following multiple client complaints regarding missing trust account funds. Sources suggest irregularities may total over $200,000. $200,000. Enough to fund an expensive affair with hotel rooms, jewelry, and $300 lunches. Keep looking, I said, CPA instincts in full gear. Blake's face paled as he found another article. Here, investigation focusing on junior associates with trust account access. One associate suspected of creating false billing entries and diverting client funds. Does it mention Drew? Blake kept reading, then looked up grimly. Not there, but I found this court filing. He showed me his screen, a formal complaint by Catherine Blake, alleging Drew Parker misappropriated $15,000 from her late husband's estate settlement. Blake, I said slowly, Drew isn't just cheating on our daughter with her mother. He's been stealing from clients to pay for it. The betrayal's scope was staggering. This wasn't just family crisis, it was criminal enterprise. Drew had systematically stolen money to fund his affair with my wife, and in 24 hours he was supposed to marry my daughter. Dad, what do we do? I looked at my son, my real son, regardless of biology, and felt cold determination settle over me. We make sure justice is served. The phone rang at exactly 8 o'clock on the morning of what was supposed to be my daughter's wedding day. I was in the kitchen, the same kitchen where I'd discovered my world falling apart 3 days ago, pouring my third cup of coffee when the caller ID showed an unfamiliar Denver number. Jeff Collins, I answered. Mr. Collins, this is Detective Sarah Martinez with the Denver Police Economic Crimes Unit. You called our tip line yesterday regarding Drew Parker and Morrison and Associates. My heart started racing. Blake appeared in the doorway, drawn by the official tone in my voice. Yes, Detective. Thank you for calling back. Sir, I want you to know we took your information seriously. We've opened a preliminary investigation, and Morrison and Associates has been cooperative in providing records. Your anonymous tip corroborated several complaints we'd already received. I put the call on speaker so Blake could hear. What kind of complaints? Client trust fund discrepancies, falsified billing records, unauthorized withdrawals. We're looking at a pattern of embezzlement that could total upwards of $250,000 over the past 18 months. Blake's eyes widened. This was even bigger than we'd suspected. Detective, I have additional evidence, photographs, timeline, documentation, financial records I've compiled using my accounting background. We'd like to see everything you have, Mr. Collins. Can you come to the station this morning? That's the problem, I said, glancing at the clock. My daughter's wedding is today at 4 o'clock. Drew Parker is the groom. There was a long pause on the other end of the line. Mr. Collins, I understand this is a difficult situation, but we can't make an arrest without a warrant. The evidence needs to be reviewed by the district attorney's office, and that process takes time. How much time? If your evidence is as solid as you say, we could potentially have a warrant by this afternoon. But I need to be clear. We can't guarantee timing. Blake leaned forward. Detective, what if we can guarantee Drew will be at a specific location at a specific time? You mean the wedding? 200 guests, including several prominent members of the legal community. I said, Drew isn't going anywhere. Detective Martinez was quiet for a moment, then, Mr. Collins, if you can provide us with the evidence you mentioned, and if the DA's office agrees to expedite the warrant, we can have officers present at the wedding venue. But this has to be done by the book. I understand completely. Can you be at the station in an hour? Bring everything you have. We'll be there. After I hung up, Blake and I looked at each other across the kitchen island where this nightmare had begun. Dad, are you sure about this? Once we hand over that evidence, there's no going back. Drew gets arrested. Mom's affair becomes public record. Indy's wedding becomes a crime scene. I thought about my daughter, probably at the salon right now, getting her hair done, completely unaware that her fiancé was a criminal and her mother was a cheater. I thought about the guests who would arrive in a few hours expecting the celebration. I thought about the life I'd built over 26 years, all of it based on lies. Blake, your mother, and Drew made their choices. They chose deception over honesty, crime over integrity. They chose to build their relationship on stolen money and broken promises. I picked up the manila folder containing all our evidence photos, financial records, timeline documentation. I won't let my daughter marry a criminal, and I won't let them get away with what they've done to this family. Blake stood up, his expression resolute. Then let's go make sure justice is served. An hour later, we sat in Detective Martinez's office watching her review our evidence, with the methodical attention of a seasoned investigator. Mr. Collins, she said, finally looking up from the photographs, if your evidence checks out, we'll have that warrant by this afternoon. I met her eyes steadily. Detective justice takes time, but today the truth comes out either way. 2 hours before the ceremony, I stood in my bedroom mirror, struggling with my black tie. My hands shook, not from nerves, but from the weight of what I was about to do. Blake appeared behind me in the reflection, calm and determined. Here, Dad let me help. He took over the tie, fingers steady where mine had failed. You taught me this when I was 12, for the father-son dinner at school. I remembered. 26 years of being his father, and it had taken this crisis to realize biology meant nothing compared to loyalty. Blake, what if I'm making a mistake? What if there's another way that doesn't destroy Indy's wedding day? Through the window, I could see our backyard transformation. White chairs in perfect rows, the flower-covered arch, string lights ready for magic. Everything Indy had dreamed of. Dad, look at me. Blake's voice was firm as he finished my tie. I turned to face my son, the only person who'd chosen truth over lies. Drew Parker's stealing money to fund an affair with his fiancé's mother. Mom's been lying for 26 years. Indy's about to marry a man who will destroy her life. He paused, eyes intense. You're not destroying her wedding. You're saving her from a lifetime of lies. A knock interrupted us. Indy's BMW in the driveway. My heart clenched. She was here for last-minute details. I found her in the living room, radiant in a sundress, hair and an elaborate updo. She looked like her mother at that age, beautiful, confident, unaware of lurking darkness. Dad, her voice was cool. Ground rules for today. Ground rules, no drama, no accusations, no upstaging my moment. Her green eyes were hard. I'm allowing you to attend because Blake convinced me you'd behave. Don't make me regret it. The words stung. In her mind, I was the paranoid father poisoning her against her beloved. Indy, I just want you to be happy. Then smile, walk me down the aisle, and keep your conspiracy theories to yourself. She left, leaving me among family photos, chronicling 26 years of what I thought was happiness. Blake appeared beside me. Dad, look outside. Through the window, Drew greeted early guests with trademark charm, expensive tuxedo, perfect smile, firm handshake. To everyone watching, he was the ideal groom, successful, handsome, devoted. Only we knew the truth. He's good at the performance, I said quietly. The best liars always are. Blake straightened his tie. But performances end, and when this one does, everyone will see who he really is. I watched Drew embrace Indy's roommate laugh, with groomsmen play perfect son-in-law with Liana's sister, a master manipulator who'd been manipulating my family for months. I straightened my tie and looked in the hallway mirror. The man staring back looked older than 3 days ago, but his eyes were clear and determined. It's time she learned what kind of man she almost married. At exactly 4 o'clock, under the flower-covered arch I'd helped build in our backyard, efficient William Barnes smiled benevolently at the 200 guests gathered to witness what everyone believed would be the happiest day of my daughter's life. Dearly beloved, we are gathered here today to join Drew Parker and Indy Collins in holy matrimony. His voice carried across the perfectly arranged white chairs past the string lights that would twinkle like stars when evening came. If anyone present has reason why these two should not be joined in marriage, speak now or forever hold your peace. The traditional silence that followed felt different this time, heavier, more expectant. I stood up. The collective gasp from 200 guests was audible. Every head turned toward me, every face registering shock, confusion, and in some cases annoyance. This wasn't supposed to happen at weddings. This was the stuff of movies and soap operas. I object, I said clearly, my voice carrying across the stunned crowd. Drew's face went white. Liana, sitting in the front row, wearing a dress that probably cost more than most people's monthly salary, looked like she was about to faint. But it was Indy's expression that nearly broke my resolve, pure undiluted fury mixed with humiliation. "Dad, what are you doing?" she hissed, but her voice was lost in the murmur of confused guests. I pulled out my phone, connected it to the portable speaker system we'd set up for the ceremony music, and the first surveillance photo filled the small screen I held up for everyone to see. "Ladies and gentlemen, I apologize for interrupting this beautiful ceremony, but I have evidence that the groom has been having an affair." The murmur became a roar. People were standing up, craning their necks to see pulling out their own phones to record what was quickly becoming the most dramatic wedding disaster in Denver's social history. The photo on my phone screen showed Drew and Liana kissing passionately at Mercantile Restaurant. The timestamp was clearly visible 3 days ago, 2:47 p.m. Now that's not all. I continued, my voice somehow steady despite my racing heart. Drew Parker has been systematically embezzling money from his law firm's client trust accounts to fund this affair. Drew tried to speak, tried to deny it, but his voice came out as a strangled croak. That's not. Jeff, you're having some kind of breakdown. I held up another photo, this one showing a receipt for their $300 lunch. Drew, you make $75,000 a year. Where exactly did you get the money for Cartier jewelry designer suits and 5-star hotel rooms? That's when Detective Martinez stepped forward from where she'd been waiting behind the rose bushes. She was flanked by 2 uniformed officers, and the sight of them sent a fresh wave of shock through the crowd. Drew Parker, she said in a voice that cut through the chaos like a knife, you're under arrest for embezzlement, wire fraud, and theft from client trust accounts. The handcuffs clicked into place with a sound that seemed to echo across the suddenly silent backyard. Drew's expensive tuxedo looked ridiculous now, his perfect hair disheveled, as the officers read him his rights. But I wasn't finished. And as for the affair, I said, turning to face Liana, who was now standing and trying to edge toward the house, it gets worse. I looked out at the crowd of family and friends, people who'd known us for decades, people who thought they understood our family. My wife has been lying to me for 26 years. Blake Collins, the young man you all know as my adopted nephew, is actually Liana's biological son. She was pregnant before she married me, and she hid that truth for our entire marriage. Blake stepped forward from where he'd been standing with the groomsmen, his face calm despite the chaos around us. It's true, he said simply, and I'm proud to call Jeff Collins my real father regardless of biology. Indy looked like she'd been struck by lightning. She stared at me, then at Blake, then at her mother, who was now crying and trying to push through the crowd of guests. Dad, Indy whispered, her voice barely audible above the commotion, is it all true? I walked toward her past the overturned chairs and shocked faces, past the ruined wedding cake and scattered flower petals. Every word, sweetheart. I'm sorry it had to happen this way, but I couldn't let you marry a criminal. Indy looked at Drew, now being led away in handcuffs, then back at me. Tears were streaming down her face, ruining her perfect makeup. But for the first time in months, her eyes weren't filled with anger when she looked at her father. She took my hand. Dad, I'm so sorry I didn't believe you. 6 months after the wedding that never was, I sat in my new townhouse kitchen in Littleton watching Blake flip pancakes, while morning sunlight streamed through windows that had never witnessed lies. The house was smaller than our old Highlands Ranch estate, but every square foot was built on truth. No secrets lurked in corners. No deceptions hid behind family photos. Dad, blueberries in yours? Blake asked, spatula in hand. Always, I said, sipping coffee that tasted better than any in years. Indy should be here soon. She's bringing someone to meet. Blake grinned. The mysterious Tom. It had taken months of family therapy, but Indy and I had rebuilt our relationship from scratch. She'd learned to trust my judgment. I'd learned to trust her choices. It worked because it was honest. The legal aftermath was swift. Drew got 4 years federal prison plus full restitution. The Colorado bar disbarred him permanently. Liana moved to Phoenix after our divorce was finalized. I'd sold the old house, couldn't live surrounded by 26 years of memories built on lies. This place was where Blake and I could start fresh. Blake had legally changed his name to Collins. The paperwork was just formality. He'd been my son since age 3. But seeing Collins on his driver's license meant everything. We'd started Collins & Associates Financial Services together. Blake handled technology and marketing while I focused on accounting and clients. Smaller than my old firm, but more satisfying. The doorbell rang. Blake wiped his hands. That'll be Indy. I opened the door to find my daughter, radiant and nervous, holding hands with a tall, earnest man in his early 30s. Kind eyes, firm handshake qualities I'd learned to value above charm. Dad, Blake. Indy said brightly, meet Tom Richardson. Tom, this is my father Jeff and my brother Blake. Tom stepped forward with genuine warmth. Mr. Collins, I've heard so much about you. Indy talks about you constantly. All good things, I hope. The best. She told me about the wedding, how you saved her from the biggest mistake of her life. That takes real courage. Indy squeezed Tom's hand, then looked at me with eyes holding no anger, just love and gratitude. Dad, I've learned to value your judgment. If you like Tom, then I know he's right for me. If you have concerns, I promise to listen. I studied this man who worked as a high school teacher, volunteered at the animal shelter, and had been patient as Indy worked through her trauma. Tom, I said, extending my hand, welcome to our family. Thank you for loving my daughter the way she deserves. As we sat down to breakfast in my honest kitchen, surrounded by people who'd chosen truth over comfort, I realized something profound. Losing everything had taught me what really mattered. The business was thriving. Blake and I made a great team helping small business owners achieve dreams instead of managing finances for people who'd forgotten integrity. Indy was happier than I'd seen her in years, dating a man who valued honesty over expensive gifts. We had Sunday dinners every week now, a tradition built on openness instead of secrets. Sometimes we talked about the past, but mostly we focused on the future we were building together. So Tom, Blake said, passing the syrup, what are your intentions with our sister? Tom laughed, completely at ease. To love her, support her dreams, and never lie to her. Ever. I smiled, watching my children, both of them biology, be damn welcome this good man into our family. We'd been broken by betrayal, but we'd rebuilt ourselves stronger. Family isn't about blood or shared history. It's about loyalty, honesty, and the courage to do what's right, even when it's hard. And that was a foundation worth building on. Looking back on this true story, I realized that sometimes God puts us in impossible situations not to break us, but to show us what we're truly made of. 3 days that changed everything taught me that family isn't defined by blood. It's defined by loyalty, truth, and the courage to stand up for what's right. Blake proved that love makes a father, not genetics. Indy learned that wisdom often comes disguised as disappointment. And I discovered that losing everything built on lies can be the greatest gift God ever gives you, because it forces you to rebuild on truth. This true story isn't just about betrayal, it's about redemption. It's about second chances and the strength that comes from choosing honesty over comfort. When God tests our character, He often uses the people closest to us. But He also provides allies in unexpected places, like a son who chooses loyalty over blood, and a daughter who learns to trust again. The grandpa stories I'll tell my future grandchildren won't be about perfect families or fairy tale endings. They'll be about real people making hard choices, about the courage it takes to do what's right when everything is falling apart. These grandpa stories will teach them that integrity isn't just a word, it's a way of life. God works in mysterious ways, and sometimes His greatest blessings come wrapped in our deepest pain. If this true story touched your heart, please share your thoughts in the comments below. Have you ever had to choose between comfortable lies and painful truths? Don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more real-life stories that matter. Your support means the world to us, and together we can keep sharing the grandpa stories that remind us what truly matters in life.